Hello and welcome to Talk Vietnam. Now here we are at the War Remnants Museum, sitting down and chatting with the friends from down under, a former SAS soldier, Laurie Sam Truck, who is now on his 10,000 kilometer journey across 6 different countries. And we're lucky enough to catch up with him to talk about his journey of healing war wounds as well as the emotional experiences. Hello, Laurie.
Good morning.
Welcome to Vietnam.
Thank you very much.
So, how has the country treated you so far, and how's the trip going?
Well, opposed to other rides that I've done here over the last 7 years, it's probably been the most emotional journey and one of the hardest because I've had to travel 2,500 kilometres to get from Hanoi to Saigon. By road, straight, it's only 1,500 kilometres. But the main aim was to ride through all the country villages, and so I can meet Vietnamese people as they are and how they work and how their culture is, and meet some former veterans, war veterans of Vietnam. And so it's been a mix of emotions, and it's been a mixture of, I would say, gathering those cultures and that from my own experiences as I've gone along the journey.
Great. So how long have you been riding since your trip started in May? How much have you, ridden past?
In terms of time, yesterday would have been the 34th day of riding. So physically, 34 days of riding. Riding 4 days, 1 day rest day, and trying to recover to continue on.
That's crazy. And I noticed that, this journey would be a lot more difficult for someone like you. What happened?
Well, I had a parachuting accident almost 18 years ago in Australia, doing a sport jump with a passenger, tandem passenger on the front, a person on the front, and I had a double malfunction with my main parachute and reserve parachute, and I had to make some decisions survival decisions to save my passenger primarily first, and if I got through it, I'd be okay. So I saved my passenger, and here I am today to tell the story.
Laurie Sam served in the Australian Army for 21 years before becoming a parachute instructor and skydiving champion in Australia and America. He represented Australia 12 times at World Championships and international events, including Australian team captain on various occasions. However, in 1995, a tandem jump from a height of 10,000 feet changed his life forever. The main parachute that Laurie and his student attached to failed to open correctly and caused a spin. The method or accessory that released also failed, and he had to use his reserve parachute to slow the vertical speed for both. Since the student was strapped lower than him on the parachute harness, Laurie could have killed him on landing. So Laurie commanded his student to lift his legs up really high so he could bear the full force when hitting the ground. The student was unharmed, while Laurie lost a leg below the knee. Laurie was then awarded for acts of conspicuous courage in circumstances of great peril from Queen Elizabeth II. After that, he learned to walk with a prosthetic leg and began a series of trekking and cycling expeditions around Southeast Asia, something that helped him deal with his PTSD.
Looking back at it now, do you regret the decision?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. My prime aim at that time was to take care of someone, and I was very proud that I did that.
So you did your duty, like a service.
I did my duty,
right?
yes.
I myself can only try to imagine, but I don't know how difficult it must have been for you. You had to give up a lot of that.
Emotionally, it was very, very difficult because it was my lifetime career. I was a parachute instructor in the Australian Army and a civilian instructor, and a sport jumper and a national team jumper. So it was basically my life, so it was giving up my life, and I had to make some tough decisions because I had to wear a prosthetic limb, as you can see, and try and continue my life as normal. So So I made some tough decisions to set some goals and objectives in life to probably not be like the average person to dwell on an injury. And I started walking and getting used to my prosthetic limb. And I thought, well, that worked. So I started doing long distance walking, and and I got a push bike. So I've been moving forward with all those things rather than going backwards.
So what was your inspiration to stand back up and live your life again?
Well, one thing, a very good friend of mine picked up a stone off the ground, and he went about 500 metres and he climbed a tower with stairs, and he put it on top, and he came down and he said, "Laurie," he said, "I want you to go up those stairs every day and bring that stone down and go up the next day and put it back up there." So he was a friends, very close friends, were inspirational for me to move forward also.
So since 2007, you've been to Vietnam twice. Why is this?
I've been to Vietnam first time in 2007 because I wanted to come back here to deal with some of the scars of war that I hold from serving here 45 years ago. And I thought, well, I ride a push bike, what better than come back here and ride a push bike, see the country, meet the people, and get that comfortable feeling about Vietnam again. And that was the first time, and I've loved it and come back twice a year ever since.
Okay, so can you explain the idea of the long ride home, what it's all about, and how it all started for you?
Sure. It started with an idea of assisting former veterans like myself, younger veterans in Australia, in raising funds and awareness of difficult times that they're going through, similar to myself, scars of war, some with missing legs, some with missing arms, and post-trauma stress disorders. And I thought Vietnam, being a former soldier here myself, would be the ideal place to start from Hanoi, and at the same time make it a friendship ride, as I've done in the past, to develop that spirit between Australia and the other Asian nations that I'm going to ride through, to bring them together as a friendship role, and also maybe develop tourism, help them tourism aspects and business.
The long ride home starts off from the Embassy of Australia in Hanoi. Laurie is sporting a jersey that he and his team designed specifically for this journey.
When designing this jersey, my art people took into consideration the stars on the wheels, Vietnam being the main focus of the ride, the yellow star, which is the symbol, of course, being for Vietnam. And the blues is really our colours of Australia, blue and white on our flags. The riders, of course, the flags of each country that we're going through: Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and then Australia.
Here, Laurie receives the Australian flag that he would take with him throughout the ride. He looks to eventually presenting the flag to the Australian War Memorial before reaching his final destination in Sydney. Once the ceremony wrapped up, Laurie is on his way, departing from Hanoi. To prepare for the long ride, Laurie had trained for months in Southeast Asia to adapt to the weather, doing up to 100 kilometers a day during certain stretches.
I've got to work twice as hard. My training regime is obviously a lot harder, particularly when I get on the mountains and I have to push harder with one leg, because I use a lot of upper leg, and it certainly tests me to the limit, that's for sure.
Laurie Sams used to serve in the Special Air Service Regiment of Australia and participated in the American War in Vietnam in 1970. After a year of service, he came home struggling with post-trauma stress disorder. Laurie's ride has many goals, among which his desire to promote and advance Vietnam's image in Australia. Above all, the journey is one that Laurie hopes will mend old wounds.
For me, in my mind, after I left Vietnam 45 years ago, it was, to me, left behind. It was one of those doors that I closed behind me. I didn't want to know about Vietnam. I didn't want to know about the atrocities of war. I didn't want to know about the things that I did here as a soldier, But now I think the best thing to do is to face those things head on. And certainly by coming back to Vietnam, I'm back in the same domain as I was 45 years ago. And just being here, that's very helpful for me.
So prior to this trip, how did you sort of practice and also prepare for this long journey?
I was interested you asked that because before you said it must be harder for me. Yes, with one leg I've got to work twice as hard as anyone else because I've got to develop stronger muscles in my amputated leg. So I set myself on a goal of going to Thailand and training on the mountains near the Burma border, going up and downhill and doing long distances every day up to 1 week, 500-600 kilometres because this ride is a long journey. So it's getting the distance and it's getting the strength in your legs and the cardiovascular fitness before you take on such a journey.
And I've always been quite curious about this. Obviously, you know, with only one leg, it's very physically it's very demanding already. How can you sort of keep balanced on that bike? How can you not fall down? How does that work?
Well, I do fall. Sadly, I do fall. I've probably had about 12 falls here in my period of time in Vietnam, but the bike itself is set up that I put my leg in and I pull on a strap and I lock myself in, like basically riding a horse in a rodeo. I'm strapped into that saddle, and if the bike falls, I go down with it, sadly. But there are latest techniques that are available, which I'm going to try later on, like skiing, you come out of the pedal. So I try not to fall. I trust my ability and look for all the dangers the whole time. And the most tiring thing is when I get to the end of the ride, I'm not tired from the ride. It's for concentrating the whole time on not falling off.
Okay, so here's the interesting part. You've actually chosen the zigzag path instead of the direct path to travel. Why is this? You seem to make your life more difficult.
That's correct. Coming down the main highway is like going down any major highway in the world. Same in Australia, same in Europe. I decided to get in amongst the country folk, the farmers, the village people, the mountain people, and that was the only way I could do it. I was zigzagging across Route 1, going into those villages, down to the coastal region of Vietnam, back into the highlands, seeing the Chum people, and I chose to do that rather than just a direct, boring, straight route here and see nothing, meeting no one at all by the time I got here. See, it is a beautiful view along there. Trong là đâu? Em 80 tuổi. 80 tuổi. Đang ấy bao nhiêu tuổi? 60. 60. Or tying onto this fishing line. Sweet fruit inside. Now I met up with these Vietnamese riders this morning.
of all these amazing things that you witnessed along the way, what has left the deepest impression on you?
I think the deepest impression is a couple of things. Is meeting a lot of the war veterans from Vietnam, that fought for Vietnam during the time from the north, and meeting them and seeing that they suffer the same scars of war that I do, and they have no resentment towards me, and we've become friends along the way. So from a post-trauma stress disorder point of view, that has helped me deal with my problems from here many years ago. The other aspect is that holds very dearly to me is the different cultures of Vietnam, and that's been fascinating. Before, when I came here, I rode from point A to point B, and I've done a ride, but you've got to stop, you've got to get down and talk to the people, and the friendliness of the Vietnamese people has been the most amazing thing along the way. It's been fantastic.
How have they sort of reacted to you being here? How have they reacted to a one-legged veteran riding a bicycle across the country?
Well, first they've reacted to seeing a foreigner out in some of the areas I've been. They haven't even taken notice of my leg. So I've been like an alien in some of these areas, and they've been open-armed to me the whole time, because I've stopped and taken photographs. I've talked through my guide, through translation, and they've welcomed me very much so. So the leg probably fairly secondary, to be honest. They haven't worried about that at all.
So what does it mean for you to, now have a friendship with someone that you used to be on the opposite side with?
Well, it means that I could put a lot behind me, because I've never wanted to come back to Vietnam because of my wartime experiences, and that's probably not the way to do it. I would say that coming back here, I've faced my demons, okay? And you could call it scars of war, you can call it post-trauma stress disorder. Most people call it other things. So I've put my demons behind me, and by facing that head on and meeting those people that you fought against is probably the final chapter in my book.
So during your journey, you actually chose to visit a few of the important historical locations, like the birthplace of President Ho Chi Minh, Dong Loc Junction, Chung Son Cemetery, and Khe Sanh as well. Why have you chosen these destinations?
Because at the moment they're not. I found that they're not the places that tourists will actually go. And when I've been there, I haven't seen any other or foreign tourists. And I feel if you want to know a little bit more about Vietnamese history, you need to visit those places. And rather than go lie on the beach in Vietnam, you can do that in any other country. And it's all part of Vietnamese history, like your famous General Dow. I mean, that's where it all started. And I think whether you're a war veteran or whether you're a normal tourist, it's important that you see a lot of the history of Vietnam.
On Laurie's long ride across Vietnam, there was one special place that he always wanted to visit again. This small hospital in Duc Pho District, Quang Mai Province, was constructed in the memory of Dr. Dang Thuy Trâm, a battlefield surgeon during the American War in Vietnam. At the age of 27, she was killed by U.S. forces while traveling on a trail in the Ba Tơ jungle in Quang Mai Province of South Central Vietnam.
I actually rode through here 4 years ago, and it was by accident that the tour company that I was with brought me into the hospital. I didn't know that it was in memory of a national hero of Vietnam, and I was fascinated with the short story of her life at the time, and I thought I must come back after reading some of her memoirs in her book, Last Night I Dreamt of Peace, and some of her philosophy on life in the jungle and her life as a doctor here reminded me of my time here, and I'm sure that I can relate to a lot of her quotations in the book. some of the memoirs I've read from that book really give me a lot of hope as a former soldier. One of the quotes that I did read was, "Don't cry on the toil of this land. There's future and hope for everybody. Live for the moment and live for the day."
Tôi thấy ông rất là xúc động khi đến cái bệnh xá Đặng Thị Trâm. Ông Larry cũng như tất cả các cựu binh ở các nước về để mà thắp cái hương, rất là kính trọng chị và rất là ngưỡng mộ chị là một người anh hùng vì đất nước.
I can see pictures of war and horror. I can see pictures of peace and hope, where Dr. Chum and the staff here even now are taking care of the patients, and during her time as a doctor, that's what she would have been doing.
The hospital now has 10 beds and is dedicated to take care of the poor patients in a neighboring area, mostly children. It is following the wish of late doctor and heroine Đặng Thùy Trâm. On this occasion, Laurie made a small donation to the patients at the hospital. He also plans to aid whatever the hospital needs after finishing the long ride home.
So you were emotionally struck heavily when you read the piece "Tonight I Dreamed of Peace." Why? Does this have any, relation to some experience that you had in the past?
Well, the image of Đặng Thùy Trâm reminded me of an experience I had here during the war in a very small battle where we had a situation that, being a Special Forces soldier, a Viet Cong woman, similar to the image of Đặng Thùy Trâm, was killed. And I had the experience of going into the area there where the body was, and I turned the body over and saw this beautiful woman, and a scarf she had on her head came off, and long dark hair fell down and flowed beside her, and that has left me emotionally one of my scars of war from that time ago, and that was one of the sad things of my life. Yes.
So what impact did this have on your perspective on the war back then?
The impact on the war is that sadly people do get killed in war. Women get killed, children get killed, and it shouldn't happen. And it's one of the sad cases for me, and it's one of the things that I have to live with. Because in a war zone, it's hard to explain, but what you do is you pull down shutters and close doors on the bad things. But one day those doors have to open up again, and I had to live with that for a long time, until about 20 years after, and that's when I started to feel the effects of post-trauma stress disorder. And by coming back here, I'm able to yesterday talk about the same incident, and I'm sure that will help.
So we have learned as well that the long ride home has made a commitment to the hospital that you visited as well. Can you tell us more about this commitment and why you have decided to do so?
Yes, I think the long ride home is leaving a part of it behind. You just can't leave the country and not leave something behind, rather than a legacy that was left behind during a war. So I made a commitment to the hospital that we can help them in any way we can, and we will. I've got the contact details of the staff and the head of the hospital, and we're going to stay in contact. And when I get home on the long ride home at the end in Australia, we're going to see what we can do to help them.
Today, Laurie sets out on his bike from the coastal city of Vũng Tàu to visit the former battle areas. He embarks on a very special meeting with a former foe in Bà Rịa City. Phan Thanh Việt is the vice chairman of the Bà Rịa City's Veterans Association. Though they have never met, the two soldiers who once fought on opposite fronts immediately found a common interest: biking.
1, 2, 3, đi!
Viet accompanies Lori to meet a group of Vietnamese veterans.
Okay. Ciao. Ciao.
Some of the men here were part of the D445 NVA regiment, fighting for the Vietnam People's Armed Forces in what is now Bà Rịa Vũng Tàu province. Back in the day, they had many clashes with the Australian Task Force, or SAS patrols, to which Lori belonged.
Cycling here, a lot of my memories have come back because in the past I've tended to push the bad memories aside about the killing and the destruction and the war. This time I decided to ride from Hanoi through here, through the old battle areas, and meet some of the former veterans along the way and here today, and that's really part of my healing process.
Núi Đất, or the SAS Hill as it was known over 45 years ago, was at its peak home to some 5,000 Australian personnel, including Lori.
No.
This now peaceful land was once a battlefield between the very men visiting it today.
Đây núi đất mình đang đứng ở đây là cái này. Đấy, cái đấy là mình đi sân bay là nằm phía bên kia. Bên kia. Vâng, là đây. Cái sân bay này. Mình đang ở sân bay này.
Traveling all the way from Australia to meet Lori on his long ride home is Robin McBride, formerly Lori's troop commander in the SAS. Like Lori, Robin too still struggles with the trauma of war, and he too wants to heal through such trips.
It's a mixture of feelings. A little bit of nostalgia for the troops I served with and the relationships, friendships we had, things we had done, but also karma too from as a consequence of chatting with people today and the hospitality accorded us by the Vietnamese and particularly the veterans. And I would say I'm a lot calmer, more peaceful, but I've still got a lot to get out of my system.
Despite the language barrier, conversation flowed between veterans of both sides as memories of the war days came rushing back.
Bây giờ hồi ức lại những cái câu chuyện năm xưa phải là rất cảm động và rất là thật lòng. Bây giờ hòa bình lập lại, quá khứ đã khép lại, thì chúng ta hướng về tương lai thấy cuộc gặp này rất là đẹp, rất là ý nghĩa. Thông qua cái cuộc giao lưu như thế này thì phía Úc, các bạn Úc càng hiểu rõ hơn về đất nước Việt Nam và con người Việt Nam.
What began as a meeting of former enemies wrapped up as a gathering of now friends who have not only shared with one another the pains of war, but also embraced together the value of reconciliation in peacetime.
Now, it's not the first time you've been to the battlefield in Núi Đất, your former battlefield. You had an emotional one this time. What makes this experience special and different from the previous ones that you had?
Very much the fact is that I was able to meet these soldiers yesterday in their full uniform. I was a bit put off at first, and I'm sure they were put off themselves by meeting a former Special Forces soldier who was their former enemy. To me it was facing those demons fully on and talking about their experiences as soldiers and our experiences, and we summarised that we probably could have been fighting each other and on the same battlegrounds. And to me, knowing that they were going through the same scars of war as I am, made me not look so vulnerable, and I thought that this is part of this ending of this chapter for me, and I probably think that was the end of it for me in terms of dealing with the whole process of things. I'm a very happy man.
You mentioned throughout this interview a lot that PTSD has actually affected your life heavily after the war, and this is a common problem for many Australian veterans as well, coming back from the war. Can you sort of tell us more about these challenges that you went through?
Yes, I can. I remained in the military when I left the war here. It was my job for the next 18 years. And there are experiences more later on in life. After just towards the end of my military career, I was getting very much flashbacks of my time here. I was married after I left the military. I had small children, and it affected my family, it affected my children, it affected my health. There was no really help that you could get, in the sense of the psychologists, the psychiatrists didn't understand totally what a soldier like myself had been through, and I was told that by them. They couldn't put themselves in the same situation, so I did a lot of self-help, and it cost me my separation from my family, sadly, because I didn't want to put them at risk. I was crawling up the hallway of my house in my sleep. I'd be in the alert mode. I'd be at a branch touching the side of the house at night time. I'd be fully awake. I never really slept here the whole time. We say it's sleeping with your ears open when you're a Special Forces soldier, and that's what we did. So I did that in my own personal life after the war, and it wasn't a very healthy thing.
PTSD is a mental health condition disorder that develops and triggers in some people who have experienced or witnessed a terrifying, shocking, scary, or dangerous event. Many soldiers who had witnessed the brutality of the battlefield or who had looked death in the eye came home to struggle with recurring trauma, depression, constant fear, and substance abuse, among many symptoms. According to Australian Centre for Post-Traumatic Mental Health, nearly 60% of Australia's Vietnam War veterans suffer from PTSD. Compared with other men of that generation, veterans coming out of the Vietnam War have higher rates of psychiatric disorders, heart disease, and alcoholism. This psychological disorder is one that has pushed many veterans to the point of ending their own lives.
So Douglas MacArthur said that the soldier above all the others prays for peace, for it is the soldier who must suffer and bear the deepest wounds and scars of war. Does this apply to you?
Well, it's one of the. I agree. It's sadly, it's one of the legacies of war. He must, and it's how they are cared for after that. And I guess that's what part of the long ride home is about. It's an awareness ride to our Australian community, to the world, and to our leaders of our country to be aware about post-trauma stress disorder. That we can't just put our soldiers back out on the street and expect that they do have to care for themselves. We've got to take care of these people.
Okay, so what message does the long ride home wish to deliver?
The message, besides the objectives of the friendship aspect for the Asian countries in Australia, is awareness of post-trauma stress disorder, and what the younger generation of soldiers coming back from wars like Afghanistan and Iraq are suffering from, and say that there is help out there, and it's how our government wishes to face those issues and to assist them is what we're really on the long ride home is about.
So what do you think is the ultimate purpose of these efforts that you've been doing?
Well, you're here now and I'm here. It's media. Media is a very powerful tool, and rather than me ride from Hanoi to Canberra and talk to the Prime Minister himself about these issues, I'm sure if he sees that it is out in the public awareness side of things, that it's already happening, and by the time I get there, I hope he understands the message.
Okay, so what's ahead for the long ride home?
The long ride ahead is I leave Ho Chi Minh City here in about 2 days after a well-deserved rest, I feel, and then I'll be continuing down through the Mekong Delta, in through Cambodia, into Thailand. I'll be doing the same friendship ride through those Asian nations and talking about my trips here to Vietnam. and then down to Australia after Singapore, and then to Perth, and riding across Australia to major cities, Adelaide, Melbourne, Canberra, and then finishing at the Opera House in Sydney in November.
Welcome to Thailand.
So how has your attitude towards the war changed from when you were a serviceman to now?
Well, I think you used the ultimate word, peace and war. 45 years ago, I was a very young soldier, and I didn't know much about Vietnam. I was just told to go to war. I was a regular soldier, and I followed orders. I came here, I feel as though I did my job. Not happily, but I did my job. If I was asked to come back here and go to war, and having all the knowledge that I would now, I probably would have a different answer. But I just think Vietnam is a very peaceful place under its government at the moment, and it's a happy environment, and they're doing what they should do in peace. If it was nowadays, I would say that there should be no wars. We should deal things much more peacefully than what we should have done then, and get on in life together as nations, as they should be.
So just before you leave, have you got any last words to share with the Vietnamese community here?
I do. I would like to thank Vietnam actually for, and if those viewers are out there that I met along the way, for their outstanding hospitality and kindness and generosity for my time that I've been here, and making sure that I've got here with a great peace of mind here in Saigon, and for assisting me along the way.
Great, fantastic. Thanks for the chat. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I wish you the best of luck, as well as more fun during your journey. All right, and see you in November, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
All right. Now that has wrapped up this edition of Talk Vietnam. We hope that through this episode of the show, you've learned one thing: that war is not a pretty thing, and people living with PTSD, suffering from PTSD, are still out there looking for help. And Vietnam is among those that are willing to provide this help and this reconciliation, where people can heal wounds, war wounds. And that's it for this edition of Talk Vietnam. Goodbye for now, and until next time.
Sweet fruit inside.